Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, De-Risk Your Implementation of BC. My name is Dean Holmes. I'm Product Marketing Manager here at Cavallo. I have a few housekeeping items to mention before we get started here today. You can expect about a 40 to 45 minute presentation and demonstration followed by Q&A, but these guys have a lot of good information, so stay with us if we go a little bit longer. Feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation using the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen, and we will do our best to answer all the questions at the end. Today's webinar is being recorded, so you'll be able to view it on our YouTube page within the next 24 hours. And I'm excited today for today's webinar. I'm even more excited to have both Colin Orlando, Lead Product Manager for SalesPad for BC, and Paul McClellan, our Distribution Strategy Advisor. They're both with us today. They're going to highlight how we will partner with you to move seamlessly into the cloud, whether you're on GP and SalesPad, or just considering moving to BC. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Colin and Paul to introduce themselves and kick us off. Take it away, guys.
Yeah, absolutely, Dean. Appreciate that. So I'll go ahead and kick things off. My name is Colin Orlando, and as Dean said, I'm the lead product manager for the Mission Control and Profit Scan products. You might hear us refer to them as SalesPad for Business Central here. 8 years in distribution, both as an end user at a tech company and now building software for distribution. Been with Cavallo about 6 years, both in sales engineering and also now in the product side, now that we've moved into the cloud. Based out of Grand Rapids, Michigan, so I'm at our headquarters here at Cavallo, and a huge Detroit Red Wings fan or hockey fan in general. I'll go ahead and kick things over to Paul.
All right. Hello, everybody. Paul McClellan, Distribution Strategy Advisor here at Cavallo. I have 30 years experience in the distribution industry. I spent a good number of years owning and operating lightbulbs.com before jumping over to the team here earlier this summer. Minnesota is my home. I live there with my wife and our 9 children. I'm a big technologist, love seeing how tech is integrated into our lives these days with AI. I love seeing how technology can be introduced into distribution and into making better software to help distribution companies. On the personal side, big 80s rock fan. Getting started here, let's talk a little bit about history. Let's talk about Cavallo, the company that we work for here. Let's talk about Microsoft's GP and BC. Kind of set the stage here for the problem of risk and the solution to risk. So Cavallo, the manufacturer behind the product SalesPad, goes back to 2003. So we're in our 22nd year here as a company. We created the SalesPad solution for Microsoft Dynamics GP back in 2003, and we're happy to have helped over 1,000 distributors. We like to create value through our software. We like to create value and opportunity, and we have done so to the tune of over $100 million. SalesPad is still our flagship product, but we have ventured off into several other opportunities. We're going to talk about that a little bit today. So let's start at the GP and BC history. GP, also known as Great Plains. We're going to talk about some dates here. This company was founded in 1981. They went public in 97. And then they were sold to Microsoft in 2001. So they went from Fargo, North Dakota in 81 to an international presence. For the last number of decades, GP has been a significantly popular ERP system for SMB. They were adopted then into this Microsoft Dynamics 365 family, which is notable, and it's going to come into play here in a little bit. That happened back in 2016. I want to focus on this timeline right here. This is a very interesting timeline. About a year ago, Microsoft announced the end-of-life support for Dynamics GP, for this legacy and very popular ERP. What does that mean? Well, we're going to break it down a little bit. So in 2029, we have this end of life. So in 4 years, we have this thing called end of life, which means that certain data updates like payroll and sales tax, those kinds of things are going to stop. That level of data. It doesn't mean that the program will be affected at all, but just those regulatory compliance data updates that need to get published every year, those are going to kind of take a back seat. 2 years later, when you see the extended security updates, what does that mean? That's more for security patches, updates to the actual core program itself. It's worth noting, though, that GP resides on a server in that on-prem environment, and a server that's protected by firewalls and other security measures. So the extended security ending is not as critical as it might appear. Now we want to confirm here, GP is not going away. At Cavallo, we're going to support this solution long-term. You don't have to leave or leave anytime soon, but these are great dates to kind of be aware of, as it may impact your current environment and it might impact your decision to stay on GP or look at migrating. So let's talk a minute about BC. BC, known as Business Central. This solution was released to the public as an all-in-one cloud-based ERP in early 2018. And so there are many viable cloud solutions that you might want to migrate to if you're running your business on GP, but a logical transition is staying inside that Microsoft family and moving to Business Central. So let's talk for a minute about some of the benefits of BC over GP. Before we get into the actual details here, I just want to state that BC is not necessarily an upgrade to GP. It's a common migration path due to the integration opportunities within that Microsoft landscape, because you're staying with Microsoft from GP, moving to Microsoft with BC. There's a lot of commonalities there that you may want to take advantage of. So as we talk about the benefits here, cost efficiency. Right now with GP, you buy the software and you pay for annual enhancement. With BC, it's subscription-based model. So the pricing model is completely different, and it's a cloud-based structure. This is great for budgeting. You're eliminating on-prem hardware and fixed IT costs. And so things like this can improve cash flow and help you optimize your budget. Incredibly scalable and flexible. BC will scale with your business to ensure your ERP system can handle that increased transactional volume and processing. And you get connections to other third-party programs called ISVs. It's very simple and streamlined because they all live inside of that Microsoft app source environment. So it becomes very expansive. And finally, we call this future proofing. Once you've implemented, automatic updates and new features and built-in compliance and security are readily available to you. Everything is kind of built into the program. You don't have those costly and scary big updates to your ERP. Everything just stays current for you. And so we call that peace of mind. Now, I want to state that once you are migrated, once you exist in that BC landscape, you're in somewhat of a low-risk platform because of the three items that we just mentioned. So risk, we talk about risk as kind of a core subject of this webinar. Risk is mitigated once you've migrated, but that's once you've migrated, right? You have to have gone through that process of migrating. So we like to establish this thing that we would call a problem. We're going to have a solution, so don't worry about it. There's a problem, and that's that ERP migrations in and of themselves are risky. And we want to spend a minute talking about what that means. Even though it's an established ERP, like BC, it's been around for years, it can still be very risky. As mentioned before, Microsoft even nods that this is not just simply an upgrade. This is a complete re-implementation. They believe it's a logical choice for you to move to this environment, and it is. There's a lot of logical next steps here, but it is a complete re-implementation. Personally, I've done 3 ERP migrations over the past 30 years, and they are stressful. They're risky, they're very time-consuming, and they can be very costly. So there's a stat floating out there, and it's backed by a lot of research and science, and that's that half of all ERP implementations fail. Not a great stat, but it's a true stat. We got to pay attention to this. What is it that might lead to this thing called failure inside of an ERP migration? Well, ERP migrations almost always require data migration from the old ERP to the new landscape. Process migration, as you look at the way that you do business and how to carry that forth in a new environment, and custom code. Custom code, while necessary, can introduce data vulnerabilities. It can increase your maintenance costs by upwards of 50%, and it usually extends your project timeline by many months. Now, it's a critical point here in these ERP migrations to fully evaluate all your business processes. You can assess bottlenecks and pain points to reduce these customizations. At this point, a lot of people ask, well, why is custom code or third-party solutions, why are they even required to fully optimize and utilize an ERP like BC? I like to bring in the analogy of a cell phone where your phone has an OS, right? It's going to be Android or iOS, but right when you set up a new phone, what are you doing? You're installing apps, right? You install these apps to fully utilize your device. And I like to look at ERP in that sense, where ERP allows for accounting compliance, data housing, and base level functionality to actually run your business. But many times you do need apps. You need these third-party programs to fully optimize your experience on that platform. So that begs the question, how do we reduce this custom code overhead while also increasing visibility into transactions and order flow? These are crucial elements inside of distribution business. So I mentioned the problem, right? How ERP migrations are risky. And so therefore, we want to leave you with a solution that we call mission control. And I'm going to let Colin take over.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Paul, and he's exactly right. It is essentially a re-implementation, and Mission Control, we really like to pride ourselves in being a faster, better, and less risky solution for anyone looking to migrate to Business Central from a legacy ERP system. And we do that in a number of ways that we'll go into in the demonstration today, but something that Paul touched on there was custom code and processes, and that's exactly what Mission Control is meant to solve, and SalesPad was purpose built to solve for as well on GP. And when we talk to our partners in the space and we try to understand more about what do these implementations actually take for an end user, we're talking about stats like 75% of the time we're looking at some sort of custom being involved. We're looking at about 6 to 8 subject matter experts from your business who have to take anywhere from 4 to 6 months away from their jobs, for hours a week to understand this new system. And where do all of those processes end up? They end up in standard operating procedure documents. And ultimately, that's a laminated sheet that's in a binder that might be in a Google Doc. And you're really counting on those individuals who are actually working day to day to follow what's written down on a document rather than having a system that can help guide them and enforce all of your different business processes. And so that's exactly what Mission Control for Business Central is intended to do. Mission Control is purpose built for two main user personas, and we're providing workflow automation and dashboards to both in a web app format and within the ERP itself. When we're talking about the web app, we really like to think of this purpose built for folks who are managers, business leaders, think IT leadership, operations leadership, those who are going to be setting your actual business processes, much like you would in SalesPad. And something that we're hearing again a lot from prospects that we're talking to in the field is that IT staff is more so feeling like they're paper pushers. They go to their C-suite, the C-suite has a request for them and they bring it back. They go to their partner, the partner writes custom code and they deliver a solution and that's the end of it. Well, they really want to be the ones in the organization driving meaningful change. And so that's exactly what we're providing them with this platform is a way to build out workflows, manage custom fields, and build business rules that will scale as your business grows. The other side of that equation is native integrations into the ERP system itself. So inside of Business Central, as a user, a CSR, a sales rep, you're going to live in the ERP inside of Business Central, and all of your other solutions are integrated directly into the ERP system. And that's exactly what we did with our product. So as a user in BC, you wouldn't know the difference between a mission control feature and a business central feature. We build it as a single pane of glass view. As a sales rep, all you need to understand is I click a submit button and Cavallo handles the logic that my business leaders have set up rather than needing to, for example, understand entering line items and then creating a pick document and a ship document and a purchase order. Let the system do that for you and let us guide the document from quote to cash. And with that being said, I'd really like to take a deeper dive and show you how that actually works inside of our system here today. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the screen share away. And Paul, if you don't mind confirming when you can see that on your end, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, looks great here.
Perfect. So we'll go ahead and start with the web application side of Mission Control. So if we backtrack a little bit, I mentioned this is purpose built with two main components. You'll see at the top of my screen, we have tabs that we can jump back between the ERP and the web application. And so there's really two main user personas we're serving here. Well, in the web application, this is where we're configuring all of those workflows, the custom fields, and the business logic. And if you're a SalesPad user, you might recognize the UI of this screen a little bit more like a sales monitor, where I have my personal workflow built out on the left-hand side of my screen. We're looking at my order workflow. And I am naming every single unique step in my workflow's process. So we hear this time and time again at Cavallo. If you've met one distributor, you've met one distributor. We allow you to curate the process to your business. And that's something that Business Central, quite frankly, is lacking out of the box, is that configurability. It's a very rigid product. And so we're adding that layer of flexibility to your distribution organization. Now, much like a SalesPad product, of course, if you're not familiar with SalesPad, you have the capabilities to go into each of your different queues or buckets and analyze all of the documents that are in there. So I'm seeing here I have a back-ordered queue with 38 documents. I can click on any of these documents and it'll take me directly to the ERP system. We also have very in-depth event-based statuses. So out of the box with Business Central, you're getting a released and an open status. We're providing you statuses based on things that actually happen to the document throughout its life cycle. And again, I'll point that out inside of the ERP. And of course, we're continuing to answer that fundamental question, when will I be profitable? And for any product by Cavallo, whether it's SalesPad or Mission Control, you'll know that at the time the order hits the system and not at end of week, end of day, end of month reporting. So the real question is, I have this neat workflow. How did I get here? And that's under our workflows tab along the top. We can build a workflow out against a quote order, invoice, or return. I'm going to use the order workflow as our example today. And it's broken up into a couple components that I'll walk us through. So the left-hand side of our screen is where we name each unique step to our process. Now, a lot of folks like to name these in order of the way that they'd like them to occur. However, they're not actually a sequential process. So you're essentially naming all of the different parts of your business, your different channels essentially, and how documents flow through to an invoice. Now, in the main part of our screen, we're now dedicating the rest of the screen to routing logic, how a document goes from new order to the warehouse, new order to a dropship queue, and executing automations on transition. So when we talk about our new order queue, whether that's an order coming in from EDI, e-commerce, standard order, a counter order, whatever it might be, we drop that new that order directly into whatever the first queue is in the workflow, essentially. And then from there, I have a primary path, which is normally I want the document to go to the warehouse. We'll reserve the inventory or allocate the inventory, and I want my warehouse processes to start. Well, distribution, we have a ton of different alternate paths that the document can take. And we're doing all of this in no code, by the way. So as a user, you own your process, and it's very easy, as I'll show a little bit later on, to actually make changes and updates to your workflow and own the process yourself without needing to understand SQL, Python, C Sharp, whatever other code language that you might have used in other programming workflows. So you see here that I have a workflow queue. By default, we go to warehouse, but we could have a promo item and navigate to the promo queue instead. We could also be a dropship order and go from Q1 to Q8 and execute a purchase order off to my dropship vendor. Or we have some customer conditions where we do go to queue number 2. On top of our routing logic, we also offer a number of on-entry and on-exit actions, we call them. These are automations that occur just as the process of the document leaving one bucket and going into another one. So as an example, when my document enters the warehouse, I have my system configured to reopen the document, authorize my card for the balance, reserve or allocate all of my inventory to the order, create my warehousing documents, so both my pick and my ship document for anything that was actually in stock. And we can even trigger off things like webhooks to either send a message off to the warehouse staff and let them know that they have something new to check for on the scanner, or even a trigger off like a Power Automate, a Zapier flow outside of our system. We have the capabilities to do that today. Now, once you have your basic flow and your automation set up, you can start to layer on what we call business rules and automatic actions. And I'll start with business rules here. Business rules we think of as anything that the business wants to check for to ensure 100% order accuracy. So think about things, of course, like your margin checks, your credit holds, if it's a rush order. These are examples that come to mind from our SalesPad users in the past, but instead of having a separate workflow queue like we did in SalesPad, what we're essentially showing you is separate that out. Have a different section for your business logic where you can own and maintain it. And again, all done with no code. So this is how all of our builders look. If any of my light items margin percent is less than a certain percent of 10, That's very straightforward, very plain English for any user to go in, and we self-guide you as you're building these. So if I say a field from the order, balance is less than, and you can continue to build out these by being prompted by the Cavallo system very easily without the need for custom code. Which with each business rule, we also have an evaluation policy, and that's essentially telling us, do we want to just approve this once and let the order move on, or do we want to always look for changes? Now, in a production environment, I would recommend a margin rule always be evaluated. In my environment, I have this set to once so that we can get through the demonstration. But ultimately, we can cache those results after the approvals are made and revisit them in the event that the numbers change. We also select the queues that we evaluate the rule for, and we also have our set of approvers. So that's the extent of building out a business rule within your environment. And we allow our users to have an unlimited amount of these rules to really curate, again, their workflow process and let it work for them. Now, also around Cavallo, we also talk about hiring a software, letting the software do a job for you. And the last thing that you want is more manual steps in your process as you're moving from GP into Business Central. So we have what's called automatic actions. I also like to think about them as automatic submits, or if you're a SalesPad user, automatic release might be a better term. It essentially allows you to configure a way to look for conditions and move the document on without a human ever needing to do so. And these come in the form of triggered, periodic, and scheduled. So a good example of a periodic action would be check my orders in my back order queue every 15 minutes to see if they're fully received. Could be partially received as well. And if they are, send them back down to the warehouse so that I can start to pick anything that has arrived on my dock. A triggered action is more like a SalesPad Plus queue or an auto forward queue where you can essentially hit a queue, run a job, and move it on to its next logical state. Now, in my workflow, if I have a promo item, I don't want a document to sit in the promo item queue waiting for a sales rep to go add the promo item onto the order. I want it to recognize that there's a promo item, send it to the promo item queue, auto add the item, and then move it on to the warehouse where we can actually start fulfilling the order. That's exactly what triggered actions are configured to do. And then last but not least, we have a scheduled action. So I like to talk about these in the realm of future orders, but again, these could be any sort of condition that you want to check for on a given day of the week or days of the week and a time. In my case, I'm checking for any shipments within the next week on Monday morning, and I'm moving them out to my warehouse. So what we can see here from this builder is, yes, it's super in depth, but it's also super user friendly in the sense that there's no code needing to be written here, and you as the end user own your process without the need to involve a partner with a custom code project. Now, where we get even more flexible is navigating over to our custom fields. And custom fields come in two different ways. We have both a new custom field section. So you as the user tell us what fields you're missing in the ERP, and we'll push a new extension out to Business Central for you with no code again, allowing you to both leverage that in the ERP and leverage it in Cavallo and workflow around it. So again, we have all of the core data types that we present in here and the different objects or entities inside of Business Central that the field can apply to. And when we publish out your custom fields for you, it'll compile all of the plain English into a custom extension for Business Central, install it for you inside of Business Central, and the field will then be available in the column chooser to bring into the different entity. This also works bi-directionally, and what I mean by that is integrate existing fields. So if I'm a user of Business Central, I might have Cavallo, but I also might have other fields from the ERP that aren't brought in. I might use Avalara or Notice Pay Fabric or InsightWorks for my warehousing, and I want to be able to bring and workflow against fields that those different ISVs are providing, and so that's exactly what this screen allows us to do. So Avalara places a ton of fields inside of Business Central for taxing. I can select any of these fields, bring them over, and then workflow on them inside of the Cavallo web application. So all of this to say, we're allowing you to own your process inside of the Mission Control web application and then enforce it inside of the ERP system, which is where we'll jump to now. So as a CSR or an order taker inside of your organization, you're going to be working inside of the ERP system. It's much better than Great Plains order entry screen. And I know a lot of our SalesPad users, they really love the SalesPad order entry interface. And we've also heard that we need our workflow to come with us as a process of moving ERP systems. And so we're really allowing the workflow to come with you and also for your users to leverage a screen inside of BC that's very SalesPad-like. When you enter the customer, it'll bring in all of the customer information, populate all the fields for you. And we're giving you workflow visibility. So that workflow queue that you set up here, you do have the capability to see this in a number of places inside of Business Central. And on the right-hand side, we're also giving you in-depth document status visibility that will change real time as events happen in the system, and also your broken rule. So if I'm breaking a business rule on any given document, we enforce that inside of the ERP system through our submit button, much like the release button. And it will go and process against our backend, return the results of, hey, you might have a broken rule. This is again super critical because as an order taker inside of Business Central, without a product like ours, you might have a customer call you and ask, okay, what's the status of my order? Well, you look it up and you can see open or released. That doesn't really tell me much. It might say we're still working on it or it's in the warehouse. Well, with our software, you'll see as we continue to do processes inside of the ERP system, it will be just as easy as looking at this fact box and saying, yes, Mr. Customer, my order is here. It's in the warehouse queue. We have a pick, a ship. Your credit card's authorized. We can take it over the phone today and fully capture it if you would like to, and really empower them to own your sales process. But enough talking here. We'll dive into the actual workflow content. So I've entered an order, nothing special here. It's just come into my new order queue, and I have two line items, one in stock and one out of stock. If I'm all set and my order entry is done here, Cavallo's already telling me before I've submitted the document to workflow that I'm breaking a couple of the business rules. And that's super critical because, again, as a user, you can go back and fix those, whether it's in a broken state or whether you're about to submit the document and take corrective action before needing to reach out to a manager. But let's say in this case, we're going to go ahead and submit the document off to the workflow engine. And I click the button. And essentially what we'll expect to happen here is our broken rules to pop up on screen, and Cavallo to essentially tell us that we've broken a couple of rules in the system. So as a sales order entry individual, I can see I'm breaking my credit rule, I'm breaking my margin rule. I'm free to add comments, but as soon as I click the submit button, we'll send this off to the appropriate approvers for each rule and allow them to make their decision whether or not we approve or reject this given document. And so you'll see the workflow submit in process here. It will return back when it's done. And this is a completely asynchronous process, meaning your users aren't locked down to this screen. Once they do submit the document off, they can move around, move to the next order, whatever it might be. Now, as an approver, I have to make a decision. I've received an email from Cavallo. I know that there's rules broken, and this is the view that they would essentially get. And you can approve documents from a number of places inside of the system, but I'm going to do it from this banner here. We could also go down to the different fact box or the line level or some of the core screens within Business Central if we'd like to also. But I'm going to go ahead and make a decision to approve or reject this document here. And we'll see I get a very similar screen as an approver. I just now have the option to select my rules and move them on. And we'll go ahead and make that decision here. Let's approve our business rules and let the workflow engine take over. Now, if you can recall to the beginning of the webinar, we went over what should happen when I go from new order to my warehouse queue. We should see a promo item automatically be added to my sales lines. Currently, we have two. We should also see the credit card be fully authorized for the balance. Our inventory is reserved for anything that is actually quantity available and in stock. And also create our warehouse documents, meaning our warehouse pick and ship, because we're using a more advanced form of warehousing in this environment. And you'll see that the system has reported back to us the workflow submit is complete. My document is in the warehouse queue successfully moved. We have my promotional item automatically added. I didn't need to worry about doing that. That's just an item that was qualified based on what was on my sales order. And all of these different statuses have updated real time, telling me now I have open picks and ships, fully authorized, partially reserved, which means you have quantity remaining, queuing up a back order scenario. Now, what's super important about Business Central, for those who haven't seen the application, is that you have this parent document, this sales order, order 1337, and you can have all these different child documents that are spawned off of the parent, meaning that the warehouse can now start to go take action on all of these linked documents that Cavallo has brought back and linked to the parent. So not only can you quickly find the related documents as they're created, but your warehouse staff can now begin to use TaskLid or InsightWorks with their scan guns in the warehouse and use these same core BC documents to finish processing your order off. And I can show you what that looks like here. So as if I had a scan gun, I'm in the pick ticket here. I can autofill my quantity as if I'm scanning it, register my pick, and it'll bring me back to the sales order, and it'll update my status and let me know now that I'm going to partially pick status. So again, going back to the theme of Cavallo's constantly updating the document to the current form as events happen inside of your different business entities. The same thing goes with our open shipments. So if we want to go ahead and partial ship scenario, get this item out the door, I can do so. We'll autofill the quantity to ship an invoice, and we'll let the system do the processing, and it'll take us back to our sales order. Now we'll still have our item outstanding, our item that's on a back order, but what this does for us is it allows us to get all of our items that we possibly could out the door, and you'll notice that our Cavallo document statuses are going to give us the most up-to-date information as to what has happened. One more thing I'd like to touch on here is that we've also continued this theme of our audit trail. We brought that into Business Central. We've noticed that it's a pretty big gap to have that full compliance view. So we call them activity logs. These can be viewed on the order level in our web app, pretty much anywhere inside of BC. But this tells you exactly what happened to the document, when it occurred, and who did it. So from a compliance level, you're completely covered. If you are a Business Central user who likes change logs, for an example, we do also work with them. We have a setting that you can turn on if you want to enable change logs, and that gets you even more document granularity. These are just all different events that have occurred that we track on our end with our software. So one more thing I want to show is our ability to create automatic purchase orders for demand. And you'll see here we have quantity remaining. In our scenario, we've done a calculated status that says if the document isn't fully reserved, that means you have a quantity remaining. And I'll go ahead and submit one more time. And in my workflow, I do have this set up to recognize it has quantity remaining status, route the document up to the back order queue, trigger off an automatic purchase order to my vendor of record, and then reserve the inventory back to the sales line that needed the inventory. Now, that part is actually pretty crucial in Business Central because reservations, for those who don't know, this essentially the allocations of Business Central. The quantity available for reservations takes into account not only what's in the site, but also what's on POs, returns, and site-to-site transfers. And so we want to make sure that if we're crafting a PO directly for the sales order, those need to be tied together so that another individual doesn't grab the inventory for their order because, of course, as soon as the purchase order is created, we have that quantity available that everybody else can see. So this is a very crucial automation. You see we have the PO tied back to the sales line. Our one outstanding item has been reserved, and as we continue to now receive this in, we can go and bring the actual inventory into the warehouse, and our transition status will transition to a fully received status, which will again allow us to process the order out. So that was a super comprehensive view of order processing, leveraging Cavallo and BC. Now, without Cavallo, you would be doing all of these different steps manually. You would be clicking through the system, creating purchase orders, creating the invoice, creating the shipment. All of these different processes that we just did very, very easily are done manually without us. Couple other areas I want to touch on is we've also continued to bring the full visibility of orders into the ERP system. So when we're talking about the same sort of view that we had in the web app with the mission control dashboard at the very beginning, we've also continued that theme by bringing the mission control workflow into Business Central. So if I'm an order taker, I can leverage this workflow in my day-to-day job and see all of the different queues or buckets that my orders go through to go from quote to cash. And I can also pare down this screen to very simply just view the queues that I work in and day out. So maybe I'm just in these 3 buckets. I can go ahead and close, and it pares down my view. And as long as these document totals are changing, I know I have something to do. You can then drill into the warehouse one step further and again view all of the same things that you could inside of the Mission Control web application. So we're talking about all of the orders that sit in this bucket currently, the related documents, along with all of the document statuses. So to answer that question when a customer calls in of what's going on with my document, a sales rep can quickly navigate, search for the document, whether it's using our dashboards or the base BC functionality, and find out exactly what's going on with that order without the need to ever put anyone on hold. And what I mean by base BC functionality is, of course, our sales order search screen that comes out of the box with Business Central. So effectively a very wide open view of all of the orders within BC. But you can see we place into the system our workflow queue, so you can give a quick answer to the queue that it's in, or also as I continue to pan down this list, all of the different statuses that occur as the document is being processed through the system. So again, very comprehensive solution that allows you as the person moving from GP to BC to curate your process, change manage it, and ultimately own it with reducing the amount of clicks that it takes you to go from quote to cash. So our goal is, of course, to leave you in a better spot in BC than you're leaving GP with. And without a product like ours today, you'd be spending a lot on custom development with a tool like Power Automate and paying that annual enhancement to continue to maintain all of those different one-off customs. So with that being said, I just want to take us through one quick recap of what we just saw here on the presentation. So mission control, this is a nice image that we like to use here. Business Central is giving you a way to manage your business. This is giving you a body. Cavallo is giving you a brain. We're giving you the brain of the ERP system that does these things like a process builder, business rules, automatic actions, custom fields, and queue actions. And that's really the value that we're bringing. We're allowing you as the end user to own and curate your process without custom code. We talked about how, as a CSR order taker, it's crucial to know what's going on, or even a sales manager, to know what's going on with that order at any given point. We're giving you that full visibility with our document statuses and our workflow buckets inside of the ERP system. And then last but not least, reducing the amount of clicks, which is overall increasing your company's output. Automate routine tasks, keep your team working in one place in a single pane of glass inside of Business Central. So thank you for all your attention there. I'm going to turn things back over to Paul to bring us home.
Sounds good. Yeah, so before we jump on to the next slide, we talked a lot at the beginning and during Colin's demo of the dangers and costs of custom code. Custom code requires constant upkeep, introduces security issues and potential regulatory risks. Customizations in these risky ERP migrations are the #1 cause of scope creep. And as you saw, we did kind of a deep dive into mission control. It's no code. Everything that you saw on screen in that demo can be replicated by a manager, by an IT director, by somebody at your organization. It's all point, click, drag, drop, customization without any code. So flat out, we believe that we've created the best app possible to mitigate risk in a migration to BC, as well as optimizing your business functions in BC once you finish migrating. So I want to segue for a minute into a firsthand experience with Cavallo. So as I mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, my history comes from distribution. I owned and operated a company called lightbulbs.com, a very large e-commerce distributor. I want to just speak for a moment on how we migrated ERPs years ago and flourished as a business using Cavallo's workflow solutions. So in 2008, we outgrew the ERP that we were on, and we were presented with Cavallo's sales dashboard and workflow automation. It was in their GP product called SalesPad. I'm sure many people watching have heard of that solution. Maybe you're even using it today. Because of these critical features that they allowed out of the box in SalesPad, we were able to migrate to GP from our other ERP in roughly 60 days without any issues. Now that's kind of unheard of for ERP migrations. They're usually very lengthy and rife with all sorts of issues and problems. So since then, so 17-ish years ago, by utilizing that workflow automation in my old business, we 3x'd our annual volume. We transacted over $215 million in that solution. And we processed over 3 million sales orders in workflow automation, and we did so flawlessly. So I get really excited talking about this because I've personally experienced it. I lived the benefits of what Cavallo puts into place for these dashboards and workflow automation that respect these critical business rules. This automation that they gave us in SalesPad removed both risk from our ERP migration and our day-to-day function. So Cavallo, as a company, started with SalesPad. This introduced and included real-time dashboards and workflow automation. I did a case study with Cavallo a couple of years back, and here's just kind of a quick pull quote from that case study. And I still maintain that statement today now that I work with this company, and that's that SalesPad works like distribution thinks. So the very best features in SalesPad for GP that were launched over 20 years ago have been integrated and optimized inside of Business Central. So with SalesPad to GP to BC, you can migrate with confidence. SalesPad for GP has workflow automation and real-time dashboards. It has a lot of other tools and options, but that's kind of the core. That's how this program started. That's how Cavallo got their name, was by focusing on that high-level visibility and automation control over your business. So the very best of SalesPad for GP, the very best and the original features are now in BC as Mission Control. Mission Control has that workflow automation and real-time dashboards to give you full control over your business process, full control over setting up automation, and making sure that this logic can run your business flawlessly.
Awesome. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much. This was a great session. We do have a couple of questions here that have come up. So I'm going to address probably the first one here. I'll go to Colin.
Hmm.
How do you ensure the unique order processes and margin controls we've built up in GP and SalesPad don't get lost during the move to BC?
Yeah, that's a really thoughtful question. And we'd like to be a part of that phase one of your move from GP to Business Central. So as you are involving your Business Central partner and that they're doing the business process reviews, let them know that you've heard about this really cool product called Mission Control that can help codify your SOPs as they're generated and allow you to get quicker first time to value with less training from your actual sales staff. They'll just need to know how to click a button for a process that you've set up. We also have our business rules that you saw in play today, where we'll catch every single order that attempts to slip through the cracks that don't meet your business's exact requirements. And so we pride ourselves on getting as close to 100% order accuracy as possible. We also have over 20 years doing this with the distribution industry and a very, very skilled professional services team that is eager to engage with folks who are looking to make that transition. So we can also help add our 2 cents into your business process, help optimize it, especially if you're a SalesPad customer, give you a readout of that SalesPad environment, what you've been using all these years, and help you really end up, again, in a better spot than you're leaving GP in. Appreciate that question.
Mhm. Awesome. Thank you. Let's see. I'm gonna probably this will probably be for you, Paul, since you were kind of talking about the timeline of GP and such. Are we okay continuing to run our business on GP while we spend time working on the BC migration?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a good question. We can go back to the points that GP is going to continue to work, and we're going to continue to support it from a SalesPad point of view. GP will still be working for years in the future, and our solution, SalesPad, will continue to work for that as well. But we are also here and readily available. And as you've seen by this Mission Control product, we have a great solution that if you want to start looking at migrating in the next 6 months, year and a half, we're ready to work with you. So at the end of the day, it comes down to what your business goals are, what your processes are, but you can continue running in GP. And when you're ready to look at migrating to BC, we're here to work with you.
Awesome. Okay, I got one more question here. It's a little bit like the first one, but it kind of has a different feel to it. When implementing BC, what safeguards can we put in place to make sure that we're not losing orders or margin, during the migration?
Yeah, I can take that one. So I think it's, again, a very good question because as we saw today, the Business Central sales order screen is really a wide open just search of all of your different orders in the system. And that goes for quotes and invoices too. So having an actual workflow processing tool where you name each and every step and know where to find your individual orders is super critical when you're talking about how efficiently an order can go from quote to cash. I mean, our founder started this product by having basically a piece of wood with a bunch of nails and clipboards on them. And when you're done with your process, you move the sales pad to the next nail on the process. And so we've tried to bring all of that into a very digitized form that allows you as the business owner to not only set your business rules, your margin targets, but also know exactly where every order is in the system. And most importantly, understand the question, am I profitable at the time the order's in the system? For whatever reason, Business Central out of the box doesn't come with any sort of margin calculation. So that's something super critical that I think almost every distributor would agree they need to know at the time of order entry. And that's one of the big pieces we're bringing to the table.
Yeah, I think that's such an awesome feature of Mission Control is setting that business rule that, as you're putting items in, like, oh, the margin's too low, you're getting notified right away. I mean, I can imagine that as you're implementing a solution and trying to, optimize workflows, just the simple fact that as you're continuing your business and quoting deals that you can very easily catch those before you become a problem seems like a very, very valuable part of the solution in the migration.
Yeah, 100%. We've heard that one business rule saved my business six figures. And as outrageous as that sounds, it's super true to be able to catch every single order below your expected margin goals.
Yeah. All right. I don't have any more questions, guys. So I want to thank you, Colin, Paul, for and for your time, and for everyone who was on here today for spending time with us today. We hope to see you at all of our future webinars. I encourage you to visit our events page at cavallo.com, events schedule. You'll be able to register for upcoming webinars and view recordings of past webinars from this page, like this recording that should be available by tomorrow. If you would like to explore your organization's specific needs further or have any questions about what you heard today, please contact your account manager for our customers that are online. Thank you again for being customers. And you can also, for anybody who's new to Cavallo, go ahead and shoot us an email at marketing@cavallo.com. Lastly, there will be a short survey when you exit the webinar. We would greatly appreciate your feedback. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and have a great day. Colin, Paul, thank you again, and we will hopefully see all of you soon. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye.